the Mutual Admiration Society. I'd just like to, as it is probably the last public event that I'll be at with Danny, I'd like to thank him for all that he's done for resource efficiency in London, and it's been very nice working with you as well. So anyway, the subject of stimulating behaviour change. RAP's had a very long relationship with many authorities in London and with London Roommates, which has all been about driving behaviour change. So we run food waste collections, we're supporting some food waste collections, we're helping to support some Love Food Take Waste campaigns, and we've worked with closely with London, with London Remade, and the support for that Dagenham plant, which was referred to earlier. Interesting location for a seminar as well. The sort of collections here remind us that nature actually is very good at not creating waste and using resources efficiently. And it really does remind us of how wasteful we are as a society. And the fact that half the materials that we consume in the UK end up as waste. And a third of the clothes that we throw away could still be worn. And a third of the products we throw away are still working. And that's a huge cost to us as a society, but it's also a huge waste of resources. And the museum also reminds us that we need to make both step changes, but also some very big changes. And I think my argument today is that this isn't really just about the environment, there's also economic drivers as well, and therefore I think it's very important that we tackle it. The size of the challenge is the size of the reward from getting resource efficiency working properly is enormous, and I'd just like to touch on that and then talk about how we go about achieving the behaviour change. I'd like to assume that we all start from the same point of view, that we want to see a more resource efficient economy, and I've picked up the UN definition here of reducing the environmental impact of consumption of production of goods and services over their life cycle. So our first imperative should be around the design of products and services so they use less resources, producing less waste in the first place, and then making sure that when we do have waste we recycle as much as possible, and especially going back into closed loop, and when we can't recycle, that we recover as much as possible to maximise the effectiveness of the resources. And in RAP we've come up with our own virtuous circle. We've heard of circles being a couple of times today, and our resource efficiency loop picks up at those points. Waste prevention, then collection and sorting, recycling, reprocessing, and market development. And at the heart of that, and driving all of that, is about changing behaviours. And how do we go about changing behaviours as individuals, organisations, and as businesses? We've recently completed some research at the end of last year, which looked into the contribution that resource efficiency can make to meeting climate change targets. And the results of that were quite staggering. They show that the UK's got a low carbon transition plan and it's got targets in that. And the evidence of this research shows that resource efficiency, using quick wins, things that are already out there, don't cost anything, if we implement those quick wins, we could achieve up to 10% of the UK's targets. So that shows that resource efficiency has a big part to play. And those changes should not have any negative impact on UK GDP. We looked at a number of different strategies for improving resource efficiency, some on the production side and some on the consumption side. And what was interesting was comparing the impact of those two approaches. So if you look at the production side, you've got things like improving your lean production, material substitution, waste reduction. And on the consumption side, there are things like better reuse, reducing food waste, using products till they run out, shifting from goods to services. And some of those are quite difficult because they all involve behaviour change for us as individuals about the way we run our lives, but also changes for businesses in the sorts of products and the sorts of ways they deliver services. What's really interesting is when you put them side by side, and you can see that actually tackling consumption is so much more significant than tackling production. And that's partly because although we can be innovative and come up with new ways of making things and technology that will drive down our use of resources if the end result is that we actually all just end up owning more televisions or more mobile phones, then that outweighs the benefits that have been gained from production. So if we're going to start to tackle some of those consumption things, we really need to think hard about behaviour change. And it is difficult to do, but I think there is evidence that it can be done. You look across at things like fair trade products. 20 years ago they were hardly ever seen, now they're commonplace. And if you look a bit closer to home at recycling, we've transformed the way in which we recycle at the moment, over the last 10 years. And that's just that's an example of that behaviour change can be achieved. So if you look at the recycling figures, they have steadily increased over the last 10 years. They've had some little dips, but overall the trend has been going up. And I wanted to focus on one or two areas of RAP's work that just show how behaviour change can be achieved. And starting off in particular with the subject of food waste. So if we look at the issue of food waste, the facts speak for themselves. In 2004 we spent £66 billion on food, and we threw away around £10 billion, more than half of which could have been eaten. So we wasted £5 billion of our own money. And as mentioned before, if we actually reduce the amount of food waste, massive savings in carbon dioxide. Much better than if you collect food waste and then reprocess it. But what's more worrying about this is that actually the vast majority of people think they don't waste food. 70% of people think they don't waste food. And it's only once you actually give them a separate food waste collection, or you ask them to keep a diary, that they suddenly realise, yes, I am wasting food. And then you see them starting to change behaviours. So food waste has got a particular issue that there's a lack of awareness of the issue. And that's one of the things that we wanted to deal with. And when we designed our food waste campaign, we took a lot of learning from the Recycle Now campaign for recycling. And I'm just going to divert into talking a bit about Recycle Now and then come back to food. The thing that Recycle Now told us was that people wanted to understand their recycling systems. They had generally wanted to do the right thing, but what they wanted was clear information about what they could recycle, how they could recycle, and then behind it, they wanted it to be easy for them to recycle. And that's been behind the whole of the Recycle Now campaign. It's been about making it a balance between providing useful information, which helps in a positive way, and then that's been backed up by lots of work by local authorities to make it easy for people to recycle. And the key principle behind the campaign is the fact that we know that people like to find local sources of information. So they rely on their local authority to tell them about things. They rely on local groups to tell them information. And so we've been providing the iconography to local authorities so they can tailor it into their own local campaigns, as that's an effective way of communicating with householders. And then the other thing which we've done to sort of back up the campaign is to try to understand what are the barriers to recycling. And they're a whole complex mixture of interwoven barriers, some situational, some behavioural, and some about attitudes. And it's really clear that people want to understand their schemes, want to know they're making a difference, and want to have some evidence. So we took some lessons from all of that into the development of our food waste campaign. First of all, we wanted it to be a supportive campaign, with a desire for change. We wanted there to be a sort of a feeling that there's some rewards in it, and we wanted it to be actionable and something that people could do something about. So that was fundamental to us. But the first thing we needed to do for the food waste campaign was to raise awareness of the issue, because there was a lack of awareness. So we started off by raising the awareness, and then we moved on to talking about what the impacts could be and what the benefits would be to people. And the campaign did touch a nerve. It was also in tune with economic realities. When we actually say, as an average household, you could save £460 a year. That really does bring a tune with people, especially in a time of economic downturn. And as with Recycle Now, the iconography is all available locally, so that you can actually make local, tailor it to give local messages as well. Retailers are also embracing the campaign. We know that supermarkets research gives them the feedback that their consumers want to know that they're doing the right thing, and they want help from the retailers to help them do the right thing. So many retailers are running campaigns in store, but the impact they can have goes much further than this, because they can work with their supply chain to help to address issues such as portion sizes and things like the resealable containers, and addressing areas of confusion like date labels. And that's been one area which has actually had a lot of work going on at the moment to try to resolve the confusion around date labelling. And as the campaign has become more established, we've moved it on from just being about raising awareness of the issue to being far more about practical tips and helping people to change their habits and their behaviours. And we all know, I mean, I know personally how difficult it is to change your behaviours. But the scope for making progress in food waste is considerable. And if we tackled the food waste issue, it would far outweigh all those production issues that I showed you earlier on the graph. So I think that the results that we've seen in both Recycle Now and Love Food Take Waste are basically because of three particular things. First of all, they're research-based, so there's a lot of evidence to understand and research to understand the problem and to understand personal motivations and attitudes. Secondly, we did research into attitudes, allowed us to identify where there was a gap in knowledge or some bridge that we needed to make. And thirdly, they were around partnerships with groups that have common interests. So it's not just us going out and giving information and making it more widely available. It's also the partners and the people who are trusted by householders to communicate with them. And are consumption patterns changing as a result? Well, I think there's lots of evidence that they are. Every quarter we go out and we ask people a number of questions about what they're doing and how they're organising themselves when they go shopping, for example, and what they're doing about food waste. And the evidence is that more people are writing shopping lists, more people are planning before they go shopping, more people are finding ways of using less leftovers. So there is evidence that change is happening, and we will be going back to look in more detail at the amounts of food that we waste to see whether the impact has actually been translated into tonnes. So just in conclusion, I'd like to make a few points. Consumer behaviour can have a greater impact so changing the consumption patterns has a bigger impact, has potential to make much bigger impacts than production. But you probably need to work on both of them. The changing in consumption patterns can, I think, be nurtured by campaigns, and campaigns have an important part to play in that. But they do need to be underpinned by effective delivery. And there are business benefits and opportunities for both local authorities and businesses. I think for businesses, one of the challenges is that we're going to need to find business models that allow businesses to continue to prosper and thrive, when actually what we're talking about is them selling less goods, and us consuming and using less goods. So more goods to services and other sorts of business models, which we need to try to work on. For local authorities, I think there's an important message about the importance that consumers place on them as communicators and as part of the whole behaviour change. And the importance that when you're communicating, it's not just about a change in the service, it's actually helping people to change their behaviours. And that's an important role that local authorities are playing. And RAP, finally, just to say, RAP is very, very committed to working with both businesses and with local authorities to make that overall difference and improve our overall resource efficiency. Thank you.